Quantum can solve problems that would take a classical computer longer than the universe has been in existence.
Where do you see the top couple of applications of quantum computing?
There's a group in Melbourne working to solve for Alzheimer's now using quantum technologies, new material development, drug development, modelling climate effectively.
The world that we're in today with AI permeating further and further, is creativity dying?
And all that knowledge and all that experience they had, at some point in the future, may be replicated by artificial intelligence.
Where do you see AI fitting into society over the next decade?
Regrettably, with any technological development, there will be an evolution of jobs. Some jobs will be lost.
Hello and welcome to The Company We Keep, where we spotlight people driving change and the future across business, sport, media and politics. I'm your host Shaun Duffy and this is The Company We Keep. I'd like to welcome John Barrington AM as our guest today. John is a established Australian business leader, an experienced board director and technology strategist with deep experience across a number of industries and areas of society. John for decades ran his own practice, Barrington Consulting, which was a management consulting corporate strategy firm. He's heavily entrenched in the arts as the current Deputy Chair of the National Portrait Gallery and past Chairman of the Perth International Arts Festival. Medical research has also been an important part of John's life as the past Chairman of the Perkins Medical Research Institute and a Director of the Health Translation Group. He was a co-founder and the initial CEO of Artrya, which is an ASX-listed company and one of the life sciences success stories to come out of Western Australia, and is currently a board member of Quantum Australia. And that's just probably a fraction of John's overall CV. So, John, we're absolutely thrilled to have you here today. That CV is very impressive and I must say was formally recognised going back in 2019 with an award, much deserved reward of the Order of Australia. Thanks for joining us today. John, welcome to The Company We Keep.
Thank you.
Now, with all of that CV that I've just rattled off, and I know that's probably only half of it, there's a whole lot more that goes beyond that. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing at the moment and what's really drawing your attention.
My focus is presently Quantum Australia, where, as you said, I'm a board member, and Quantum Australia is charged with developing the quantum technologies ecosystem in Australia, computing, sensing and communications. And I think in the future, that is the area that will have the most profound impact on solving some intractable problems. The other area is the arts, the Portrait Gallery in Australia, in Canberra, which is a gallery of art and a museum of stories. I chair the John Curtin Gallery here in Perth, and I'm also on an advisory board with Black Swan Theatre. So it's, some people think it's quite unusual mix being arts and science together. I think it goes together very naturally. And I think, well, Da Vinci didn't have to choose. He did both the arts and the science. There was no wall between them. And I think that intersection is where innovation actually comes from.
Can we talk a bit about quantum computing to start with? I think you're spending a fair bit of time there. Firstly, Quantum Australia, what is it? Is it a university body? Is it a government body? Is it industry funded? What sort of organisation is it?
It's government fund, federal government, and I'll come back to that because that's important where Australia is now. So federally government funded, it's an independent advisory board sitting above a consortium of 13 universities. And the university sector in Australia are now recognised as amongst world leaders in quantum research. And to the federal government's credit of both persuasions going back a quarter of a century now, the quantum research has been funded and put us at a forefront position. What is it? Quantum? I don't try to explain it. Nobody can. Even the physicists will tell you that.
Do your best for a layman like me, and I'm sure many people listening.
Well, I think what's interesting is what it can do. So a classical computer, your typical computer that sits on your desk, thinks in ones and zeros, on or off like a light switch. Quantum computers process problems that traditional computers can't, in that quantum computers can look at all possibilities at once. So quantum can solve problems that would take a classical computer longer than the universe has been in existence. So not just faster, solving problems that cannot be solved, those intractable problems humanity has not been able to address. Solving for cancer, Alzheimer's, modelling climate change, assessing drugs, developing new drugs. It's able to assemble infinite variables simultaneously.
I read an analogy that we should think of it a little bit like the difference between current computing is a coin toss. It's either heads or tails. Quantum computing is the coin spinning and an infinite possibility of heads and tails all at once. Is that fair?
That is very fair. That's what it is. It can be, going back to the classical comparison, it uses qubits that are 0 and 1 at the same time. So it's heads and tails at the same time. That's called superposition. There's another concept called entanglement where the qubits can be linked to each other. And that enables the quantum computers to solve for problems that cannot be addressed by even the largest supercomputers today. So another analogy I think of is it's like having a key to a room, a key that we've never had before. And in that room is the world's biggest problems facing humanity. It can unlock that door.
And where are we at in the life cycle of development with quantum computing? Are we early stage? Are we at a mid-level of maturity? Is it functioning to its capability yet? Or these are sort of questions you're looking at Quantum Australia?
The theory has been around for 100 years, so it's actually been around longer than AI has, and yet I think in some ways it's in a similar position to where artificial intelligence was when I got involved 10 or 12 years ago. And that is, there's a lot of skeptics, a lot of people saying, it will never work. It actually is working. So quantum sensing and quantum communications is happening today. Quantum computing is starting to occur. In fact, there's the Australian of the Year, Michelle Simmons, her company in Sydney, Silicon Quantum Computing, put a commercial chip into Telstra last year, and that is assisting Telstra model the mobile communications network far faster than it was ever completed before. So that's in commercial use. So the research is continuing. That's been very well funded. The translation is happening and the commercialisation is starting to gather momentum now. That's really where we're at. Quantum Australia, one of the focus areas for Quantum Australia is new startups, and there's more than 40 quantum companies in Australia alone, and doing some of, like Michelle's work, doing some world-leading work in both sensing and communications, as well as the quantum communications. So we're at the early stage of commercialisation. People often ask, how long will it be? Reasonably, I think then over the next 5 years, we'll see quantum computing used more generally.
You mentioned medical research and some of the other big problems facing humanity. Where do you see the top couple of applications of quantum computing?
Well, medical research is something that I'm particularly interested in. So certainly in that area. And I mentioned those diseases, cancer, Alzheimer's. There's a group in Melbourne working to solve for Alzheimer's now using quantum technologies, new material development, drug development, modelling climate effectively, so addressing climate change, energy sources, developing batteries that actually can ensure that renewable energy becomes sustainable and used through the course of the day and night, so new energy sources as well.
I'm interested, you mentioned when you first started looking at AI 10 or 12 years ago, I reckon we caught up around then, and I actually think you were the first person to talk to me about AI, and I remember walking away scratching my head thinking, I don't actually really understand what he's on about, but you've always been a forward thinker, so I'm really interested in your views on where you see quantum going, because it's not part of the broader conversation generally. You have been to a conference recently in Adelaide, I think a global conference that was being hosted in Australia. Tell us where Australia's at on the map and your key couple of takeaways from that conference.
Australia is recognised as a leader because of that quarter century of work and well-funded research. There was over 900 participants at the conference organised by Quantum Australia, and many of the world leaders were at the conference. So that says a couple of things. One, Australia is recognised as a place to be, so they will come to the conference. Two, it gives us the opportunity to be a player in the global network. So the takeaways from that, it goes back to your earlier question. We've come out of the labs. It's now at the stage of being applied, and a very real area for businesses today, and this is available, is cybersecurity area. You may have heard of the Mythos model development by Anthropic, which cracked the security codes on many web browsers and applications that have been around, some of them for 20 odd years, and the security has never been breached. Mythos, the AI agent, escaped its sandbox and broke the security. There is a concept now called, it's harvest now, decrypt later. So the bad actors are getting into corporate, institutional data systems, extracting the data. They can't crack the cybersecurity codes presently, but when quantum becomes available, that will be easily broken.
Interesting.
So what can be done now is you can put in quantum security now, quantum-enabled security that will prevent breach today, even by a Mythos, or in the future. And that's an action. I think that's a discussion boardrooms should be having today.
This century, we've seen some really seismic shifts with, the internet and smartphones and social media and now AI. Do you see this as of that scale?
It is more profound because it will help us solve the problems we've never been able to solve. Those typical problems where there is so many variables to model that it just cannot be done. So the longer than the age of the universe is literally a Chinese quantum computer resolved a Boson molecule sorting problem in 25 milliseconds that would take multiple ages of the universe to resolve using a classical computer. The issue is not really the speed, it's addressing things we've never been able to solve. One, in a commercial sense, is logistics. And there's the travelling salesman problem, that which path should the person take? So organisations involved with logistics, whether it be in resources or agriculture, moving the grain to stores or train lines and all that, where there's multiple variables, are classic opportunities for quantum to solve those. So to answer your question, I think when you put AI and quantum together, that's where the profound change will be. And I think, yes, it will be a step change up above the internet.
Let's leave quantum for the moment. I went through some of the highlights of your CV at the intro there, but you've had a really nice blend of business, corporate world, the arts, medical research. In your mind, are they discrete boxes, or are there themes that run across those that are the some of the tenets of the way you operate?
There's absolutely a theme, and the intersection, I think, is in innovation. And you take Da Vinci, and it's a great example, and I really like it. People generally know him because of Mona Lisa, but he was an engineer and a scientist as well. He didn't have to choose. That sense of having to choose, am I an engineer or am I a creative, that's a modern problem that we've created, and we shouldn't have to choose. They are inextricably linked, because I think it comes down to innovation. That's where innovation starts. The artist looking at a blank piece of paper, the inventor, the innovator, thinking about what has not been before, but thinking about the possible as well. What might be possible? And so innovation is creativity. And I think where we lose that is, I always say, all the great societies through history have had a strong arts and culture sector. And I don't think that's any accident. When you denude a society of that or reduce that, you don't just lose great pieces of art, you lose the ability to think creatively, to develop the creative, the innovative muscle of a community. And I think that's where the two come together so strongly. And within that intersection, then comes those new ideas that have never been conceived of before.
In the world that we're in today, with AI permeating further and further, is creativity dying? Human creativity?
People think that. My view is that's completely wrong. It's completely the opposite. So the machines are very good. They're good at writing now. They're good at image creation. But what they don't do is have that soul that people have, that the creative, they're still not as creative as humans. They don't have that flair, that empathy, the collaboration. They're the human skills that will become scarcer, and scarcity becomes value. And so I think those very human, they were soft skills now, or they were, but now they're the essential skills of the future. And so humanity will stand apart if we promote those skills of our empathy, our ability to relate. And I speak from personal experience in this, from a hospital bed where I had a precipitous drop in blood pressure, and suddenly a medical emergency team was called, and within seconds there was a team of 6 doctors and 6 nurses. And all that knowledge and all that experience they had, at some point in the future, may be replicated by artificial intelligence. But what made the difference for me and what I remember was a nurse put a warm hand on my shoulder and a doctor put his hand on my arm, and they said, "We'll get you through this." Mm-hmm. And that was one human relating to another. And I think that for me is the soul in humanity. That's what we've got to hold on to and enable and ensure that humanity prospers. It is about controlling the AI and keeping, like in that instance, the human in the loop.
And so is there perhaps even taking it to the arts level where you are heavily involved in, are there themes that you see coming out of the arts world specific to AI? Is it part of society where maybe AI is less permeative than business or medical research?
It's permeative. The two themes are some artists are vehemently opposed to it, and other artists are not using it as a tool but as their sole medium. That is the art that we're doing. Movies are now being produced using AI. So I think the future will see the fusion of AI and the human creativity. And regrettably, with any technological development, there will be an evolution of jobs. Some jobs will be lost, but many more jobs will be created. I think more so tasks will be lost. The lower level tasks that the machine can do cheaper, faster, let the machine do that. Let humanity rise and do the broader, longer term, more creative thinking enabled by this tool.
John, I've always thought of you as a thinker, as a curious man, and I think people listening to the podcast will probably get the sense of that. But was that always the way, or did that evolve over your corporate consulting career where you're advising businesses and helping them to think forward? Were you always someone that thought beyond the horizon, or did that evolve over time?
I think it's the way I'm wired. That excites me. It's not the 5% change. I have to say I do. That's important, and we need that incremental improvement and becoming more efficient. And so it just doesn't excite me. So that blank page in the future and creating options, that does really turn me on. And through the internet and AI and big data in the late 1990s and now quantum, I do tend to get onto technologies early, but I don't think, with hindsight now looking back, what I've come to understand, it's not about the technology. So in the early 1990s, I wrote about a new organisational form called the virtual organisation. It was enabled by this new thing called the internet. But it wasn't the internet per se that really generated the real interest, and I created a company based on the internet. It was the people side of it. And in that instance, the people side of it was, I could see a lot of very talented people in our community that weren't able to continue working in the way they had previously. Young mothers with young children, or mothers with children generally, who couldn't access the office, didn't want to work in the 9 to 5 or more likely the 8 to 6. The internet enabled that. And so I think the underlying areas that I'm interested in the technology is that technology, but it's that macro change and enabling for people. So with AI, it's helping to solve problems, medical research type problems, as you mentioned, quantum even more so.
And you did you find it hard in your consulting life to get companies to think that far ahead? They're notoriously short-sighted, particularly listed companies are obviously often just thinking to the next results reported. How did you go getting companies thinking way down the pipe?
It's very difficult. Boards don't like it. Companies find it challenging to fund. And I think individuals find it particularly unsettling. That uncertainty, it may not be a pleasant place to be. I find it quite exciting. It is difficult for organisations to do that. And what happens often is innovation is the label used for the incremental improvement. But new ideas are never going to come out of just a spreadsheet. So I think what you've got to do is protect time for individuals to have that opportunity to think more broadly and away from the 90-day cycle of the a listed company challenge. You've got to protect that time and the machine of the organisation, which leadership has to be running, of course, has to be throwing off enough cash and surplus to fund that. And I think also you've got to stop labelling incremental improvement as innovation. You've got to be honest about what it is. So it is very difficult, and I think organisations generally are challenged with that, truly operating in Horizon 3.
You, at the early days of AI, as we mentioned, you were part of the foundation and the first CEO of Artrya, which is now a ASX-listed company performing exceptionally well, using AI to diagnose coronary artery disease, I think, is that right?
Yes.
Earlier than you must be very proud of that. Just give us a bit of a sense of the foundation of that and how you got from how you translated those ideas around AI into the application of medical research, which is now a very real thing. And I would say, to your credit, the company got FDA approval last year, which there's only a handful of West Australian companies, I think, have achieved that. So congratulations.
Well, the team that was there actually achieved that FDA approval. Prior to that, we got approvals in Australia, New Zealand, European Union and the UK. And the team did a great job in getting FDA approval. They're now going for the next levels. They've actually got 2. They're going for the next approvals. Yes, it is something that I'm proud of, and my co-founder, John Constantopoulos, and I spent a year thinking about where AI could be applied for maximum benefit to humanity. Interestingly, that was the forefront, and the returns, they follow. If you're doing something good, I think the economic returns actually follow. So we brought on the first employees in 2019. We listed in 2021. We developed the product over a very short period of time, and product development goes on. But it is a great success story, and importantly, it's solving a major issue. Heart disease is the largest cause of death in the world. And so the ability to identify a real predictor of heart attack is a great step forward, and do it so efficiently within the medical system. So the system benefits from it, the nation benefits from it, individuals and their families and friends also benefit from it.
You mentioned there around looking at AI early and where it might most benefit people. We're stepping back from Artrya specifically, and maybe even medical research specifically. Where do you see AI fitting into society over the next decade? I know we've been through this process a little bit with the internet. I think we're all early this century trying to work out how it was going to fit into life, and now it's just part of everyday life. Where do you see AI being societally in a decade or so?
The internet is pervasive, and we don't think about it today. AI, I suspect, is going to be the same. And your next question may be the adverse impacts of AI, and I'll come back to that. But my point here is to say AI has actually been around. What we call AI, machine learning, deep learning, it evolved into AI, has been around and influencing humanity for 15 years. Ever since the social media companies started to bring it in, which is around 2010, it has been influencing humanity. In that case, I think adversely. But it is pervasive already. It will become more so. And so across all walks of life, whether it be at individual level, institutional level, or state level, AI will doubtless play a significant role. And my view is so it should, because to my earlier point, it will lift humanity and will be able to spend more time on the things that really matter.
And what about the downsides? Where do you worry, or where should we be cautious?
Well, there's a lot of concern now about particularly social media, impact on the youth, impact on people generally. That's been happening for over a decade. And that happened because we didn't understand what it was. In some ways, we might still not understand what it is. Meta and Google have been found by a jury to be culpable. There's 40-odd states in the US taking the charges further against those platforms. I think we need to be very careful and very cautious, and what is actually required at a global level, we've seen before in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And that was interesting because that came out of the Cold War, and there's now 200 countries signed up to that. It's held for 50-odd years. Now, it's not without its problems, and it's under great strain right now.
Sure is.
But it has held. We need something similar to the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty for nuclear arms. We need that for AI at a global level.
Now, can we wrap up with a couple of contemplative questions? With all of this experience that you've had across the different aspects that we've talked about over this conversation, if you could jump in a time machine now and go back and have a coffee with 18-year-old John Barrington and just have half an hour to give a little bit of advice, what would be the advice that you'd give your younger self?
Now I would be careful about what I advise, and I'd be sensitive to it. And I wouldn't say a lot, I don't think, because that 18-year-old John Barrington and subsequently made a lot of mistakes. And I think everybody's got to go through that. That's the hard yards where you really learn. But one thing I would say is follow your bliss. And I'd watch his face, because he would think, wow, that's great. Let's get out and have a lot of fun. It's a Joseph Campbell phrase. And many years after he said follow your bliss, he regretted saying that because it was greatly misunderstood. And Campbell then remarked, what I should have said was follow your blisters. And following your bliss is about doing what's truly you, what's intellectually you, what's in your heart and your gut, and getting that arc aligned and doing the things that you really have to do, the things that you cannot not do, and they're the hard things. I think to be true to yourself, that's where you make a difference to you, and importantly, you make a difference to others.
And then finally, across the various areas that you've worked, you've contributed in so many different ways and been formally recognised with the Order of Australia. What legacy are you most proud of, or what would you like to be most known for, remembered for from the contributions that you've made?
Having a family. I'm not really into legacy, but I think having a family, having 2 children that have good values and contribute to society.
Thank you very much, John. Fantastic. Thanks a
you.
lot. Thank you for joining the company we keep. To find out more, please visit vectoradvisors.au, and please remember today's discussion was general in nature and not financial advice.